Hello again, here we go with chapter 5 of René Me.
René and Me by George East. Read by Eugene Fraser.
March the 25th. It is our wedding anniversary. Given the disappointment of our abortive Christmas Eve run ashore, we decide to celebrate in the evening by going on a pub crawl of all the hotspots in Saint-Sauveur-le-Vicomte. This will not take long, but will give us the chance to get to know the local socialites better. Donella declares I must earn my wild night out, and presents me with my anniversary present, a pair of thigh-length waders. Obviously, it is to be a day of working with the water. Since she first saw La Puce, Donella has been fascinated by the possibilities of our streams, ponds, and waterlogged pastures as additional wildlife sanctuaries. Over the past year, she has spent a great deal of time and money undoing the massive works of past centuries aimed at channeling water past the Moulin de la Puce as quickly and effectively as possible. Now we're here full-time, she is daily coming up with schemes to turn the 10 acres into one gigantic lake. Built to service the needs of the surrounding estate, the mill was positioned to take advantage of the tiny Lude, which sources at the manoir of the same name just a mile away. The system used to turn the mill wheel was as effective as it was simple, and common throughout Europe from at least medieval times. When grinding time approached, the miller would simply lower a stone slab across the stream, diverting the Lude into the 2-acre field directly behind the moulin. When Le Reservoir field was flooded and the grain hopper full, a slab by the business end of the mill would be cranked up, allowing the reservoir lake to empty over the top of the wheel. The millions of gallons of water would then rush away down an otherwise dry riverbed under the stone bridge which led the carts to the mill, and finally alongside the copse to join up again with the Lude on its way off the property and on to the sea. This simple but ingenious example of 18th century engineering to create considerable power from a small stream worked happily until around the turn of the century, when a newfangled mill appeared at Neuilly and the tiny Moulin de la Puce fell into disrepair and eventual ruin. Over the years, the working end of the mill has been feasted on by local builders and householders like ants on a juicy carcass. The original wheel is said to be a feature at a nightclub a few miles away, and rumour has it that even the local police station benefited from the plunder. One day we will restore the working end to its former glory and function, but to rebuild our lives and business at La Puce is a far more pressing project. The plan for the day, Donella explains, is to create a barrier at the stone bridge. By the careful placing of a few sandbags under the arch, rainwater and the constant dribble from the water meadow would be collected in the dry riverbed between the bridge and the sadly depleted mill pond, creating a natural and comfortable habitat for another 100 or so Hampshire goldfish, which she'll smuggle in via her collection of Victorian chamber pots still in England. An added advantage of the additional ensuite fish facility will be the protection afforded by the sweet chestnut trees lining the bank at this point. They will deter the heron, which has been studying our goldfish pond almost as enthusiastically as René, and the new stretch of stagnant water will attract more frogs to join Triple Salco and his troop. I do not tell my wife that our estate manager has already brought me the good news that our frog colony are of the edible variety with particularly long and plump legs. He can tell this from a distance by the range and breadth of their diving display from the tops of the flag lilies into the small pond. Discussing the fine-tuning of the damming project, I asked my wife how she intends creating a sandbag barrier with no sandbags. With a snort of impatience at my lack of initiative, she points out that we have an adequate supply of plastic rubbish bags to hand and a mountain of sand outside the mill which is threatening to attract its own cloud formation. I have my doubts about the suitability of the binliners, but anything which reduces the sand pile will be to my advantage in the struggle for supremacy over René. We've had yet another tractor load from a crony of our estate manager, and who I have now discovered is a close friend of the foreman of a nearby corporation yard. I've driven by, and the mountain range of sand within seems of a very similar consistency and colour to our own. In our experience, most Contentinees are as honest as a long summer day when it comes to respect for personal possessions, and we've left our garden furniture out, and even doors open during short absences, with no loss. However, certain natural objects like sand, gravel, trees and wild animals on one's land can be regarded as fair game or even a gift from heaven, and may be redistributed if left unattended for too long. On a visit last year, we arrived to find a pile of huge and obviously valuable marble slabs dumped by the stream at Hunter's Walk. After agreeing to a knockdown price, when my wife pointed out the difficulty of his shifting them again, explained that they were almost a gift from yet another friend, and would make an unusual and sophisticated terrace outside the caravan by the big pond. Apart from one slab, which was used as a makeshift but stout bridge across the grotto, they still lie beside the stream, comfortably hidden in summer by the long grass, and I feel reluctant to move or use them. There are no names or epitaphs inscribed on the shiny sides that I can see, but their texture and design looks highly suspicious to me. And the funeral parlour yard at Saint-Sauveur has a large hole in its fence. René appears like a ghost in the early morning mist as I struggle to position unwieldy bags of sand beneath the ancient bridge, and helpfully points out that the rubbish tip is only a mile down the road. I explain that I am constructing, under my wife's direction, a barrage to fill the old mill pond and a short stretch of the dry stream. I don't mention that the real objective is to create a predator-free frog and goldfish haven. My friend looks at the untroubled sky, wags a grimy forefinger in my general direction, and announces the arrival of a thunderstorm extraordinaire by midnight. The bags, he says confidently, will be no match for the deluge. For once defending my wife's convictions, I disagree publicly with him, and he stomps off to sulk in his caravan. I add another dozen bags of sand before climbing out of the miniature ravine for a coffee break. As I walk to the mill, it begins to rain. We start our bender at Jackie's bar and grocery store in the shadow of the castle at Saint-Sauveur-le-Vicomte. Once a thriving market town, Saint-Sauveur has suffered more than most as a result of European unity and a common agricultural policy which has penalised the smallest of French farmers, and money is very tight. It's not a pretty town, and tourism has not been of great benefit. Mostly the people seem to get by with seasonal farm work and help from the government when the winter sets in. As the average bar visitor spends the evening nursing a single beer and complaining bitterly about the hard times, the government and the invasion of New Zealand lamb via the UK, we're careful not to air our comparative affluence. Most English people we know seem to believe that rural poverty in France is found only in the deep south and is somehow picturesque, with the peasants contentedly living off the land while wearing striped jerseys and amusing berets. This is not true, and real life in the Cotentin can mean getting by in conditions which the average British reader of romanticised twaddle about the joys of living in rural France could not begin or wish to imagine. While at Chez Jackie, I take the opportunity to visit the toilet facility, which is a minor classic in my list of Cotentin public toilets. Sited most conveniently at the bottom of the yard and alongside a stack of vegetable supplies for the shop, it outdoes even the arrangements at the Bar Gislaine for simplicity and ingenuity. The system consists mainly of a large, furry and ancient cider funnel clamped to the wall at the optimum height. From this device runs a length of garden hose, which disappears down a drain in the middle of the yard. I, and probably Jackie, have no knowledge as to where, if anywhere, the drain joins the local sewage system, and on a busy night there can be some backfill problems as the route of the hose from the funnel runs slightly uphill. But it works after a fashion, and the open-air toilet offers some of the best views of the sky at night in the area. There's also a keen element of spectator interest for those living in the houses overlooking the yard. One day, I'll write a definitive guide to the lavatories of Cotentin, which I find much more interesting than many of the more conventional tourist attractions. Hearing a noise, I look down and see Albert has joined me for a bit of male bonding. He cocks a leg and pees with unerring accuracy over a sack of carrots. I look up at a sea of stars and contemplate the true scale of the universe and the relative unimportance of my petty concerns. As I return to the bar, the rain increases in intensity and a grumble of approaching thunder rolls across the moonshiny rooftops before echoing around the yard. As it's a special occasion, the bars of Saint-Sever stay open late and all have record takes for a midweek night. It is almost 10 o'clock before we arrive at Le Puce, and Donella puts me to bed. I awake to find that the ghost of the Allied warplane is restrafing the cottage roof, but my wife says it's merely a cloudburst. I look at the clock. It's still well short of midnight, so René may yet be proved wrong. An hour later, the storm is certainly extraordinaire, and the rain, driving horizontally against the French windows of the balcony, is forcing its way between the putty and panes and running down the glass on the inside. I get up to close the storm doors and hear a roaring noise from the direction of the mill cottage 100 yards away. Full of foreboding, we dress in wet weather gear and slither down the slope from the farmhouse to the wooden bridge. It is still in place, and we stand above the normally arid riverbed and watch in awe as a raging torrent cascades down from the reservoir field into the old mill pond, filling it to overflowing for probably the first time in 100 years. The flood boils and roars as it is forced along the ravine below us to be channeled under the stone bridge and away into the night, howling in frustrated fury at its containment. Looking over the parapet, we see that 8 hours' work and the 20 plastic sandbags have been casually washed away by the deluge. Even now, they're probably heading out towards Jersey. As we battle our way back up the slope, and in spite of the deafening roar of the deluge, I am sure I hear a grunt of triumph from René's caravan.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that chapter of René and Me, and that you join us again for the next one. See you soon.
René and Me. Written by George East and read by Eugene Fraser.